Nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Rugby podcast. I hope you're all well. My name's Craig Manson, and I'm going to be hosting this evening. No, Alan, I went all the way through. I was all professional, and then the dreaded E word came in straight away. I can't believe it. Anyway, right.
I love that my mind tricks are working as far down as 5. I've been practicing hard.
You do that with the door. You gesture at automatic doors and just get them to open up as well.
So but when I scan my club card for Scan As You Shop in Tesco, I point at which handle I think is going to come free, and then sort of like act really nonchalant if it's the one I point at just by random chance, like I planned it.
Well, tonight, or today, or during the day, or during your dog walk, or whatever, I'm fresh from. I've just been down at the golf range actually today, so it's been trying to just rattle off some, getting rid of some, just try to get some pent up energy lost in me today. So I hitting some dodgy balls, and I went all Rory McIlroy and told a few American golfers to shut up and do one, as they say. So I'm not joking. I would never do such a thing. And David, if you're listening, I would never tell an American to get lost. Only you, David. But anyway, joining me tonight or today, I don't know. I wrote tonight down in my book, Alan. It's absolutely ridiculous. Someone who gathered his team the other day, brought them in from all over Scotland to let them know that beards are allowed, and he's quite happy to see overweight people in general hospitals. Alan McDonald, how you doing?
I resemble that comment, Craig. I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well.
Good. And someone who, unlike Christy Nome, is allowed to use a toilet in Portland. Mark Riley, how are you today?
I'm very well indeed, thank you. Good to see you all.
Good. So, what's been going on? We've obviously we were meant to have a fleeting glimpse, and Brian, I think you're pretty much correct. Brian Dalglish has put a wee message in, but we were meant to be having a fourth join us tonight, and unfortunately, John Anderson realised that we were going to start talking about Italian teams and how good they were, and they weren't unserious. So he's decided to call off. Unfortunately, I hope all's well, John, and we'll hopefully have you back on as soon as we can. But gentlemen, have been up to much this week? What's your week been like?
I've been on holiday, so I have done the square root of not very much. I've started trying to tidy my study, which I spent hours on it today, and it looks no better. So I'm trying to tell myself it just has to get worse before it gets better, but I'm not convinced. I think it's a fool's errand, but here we are. I've started.
And Mark, you've been up to much. You've been still looking for someone to buy the palace that is your one of your houses.
Absolutely. A bit of work on the house and the usual working on the job stuff. But yeah, it's quite amazing when you're not doing anything, how little you do. It's there's a pal of mine over the road that says if you want something done, give it to a busy man, and I have worked very hard to prove him entirely right with that since I haven't been working.
Well, yeah, I've had a few days of doing absolutely nothing, and I've got another week of it, and I'm thinking to myself, today I decided, no, I'm going to the golf range. I'm going to start fire a few balls off, and then I'm going to cut my grass because it's an all right day, and I'm going to try and keep my head busy and try to rattle away at that. And then all of a sudden the day's gone, and I'm like, when's my lounging time in the where's my wee nap just after lunch and all that time? That's all gone,
Well, I had a wee nap after lunch today because I was in with the dogs and got woken up by a Labrador sticking its nose in my hand, demanding to be stroked. Sort of I think they get worried at the snoring that I'm stopping breathing. I think that's
Well, we all know now how to get stroked by Allan McDonald. Does that to disturb them while he's sleeping, I suppose.
You have to get a wet nose. That's the only thing you have to wet your nose.
Well, it's better than wet something else. Our podcast is part of the Sports Social Network. And don't forget to give us a follow or a like on your favourite podcast app. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and don't forget to give us a follow on social media. I did the horrible thing, and Johnny McGinty will not be happy with me, but I returned to Twitter a couple of weeks ago to or X or whatever you want to call it, just to say a big congratulations to Jade Conkle for her amazing career, and it was. I felt like I felt dirty. I had to sort myself out and go straight back on the blue sky. So, but we're all on. All of us are on those specific places as you feel free. You can find all the links on our site, www.scottishrugbyblog.co.uk. Very much worthwhile going and having a look on the blog. We have a lot of good writers that write quite a fair bit of stuff about women's rugby, men's rugby, and many different things. So have a look at the blog and see how you get along with it. If you're listening on Apple, like what we do, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It's always helpful and it spreads the word as well. If you like more content and you want to support what we do, you can subscribe to our Patreon from just £3 a month plus the VAT. and that gives you access to our super secret Facebook group in the second part of tonight's podcast, as well as some Patreon exclusives. And we're a bit light with the Patreon exclusives at the moment, but we are trying to do something. But unfortunately, just with things that are going on in the background, it just slows us all down a wee touchy. But we will get them sorted out as soon as we can, and hopefully you will be seeing some more from us. Gentlemen, we will move on to the news, and Scottish Rugby's new old glory, the Newcastle Red Bulls, have been recruiting a little bit from the SRU. John Fletcher, head of pathway and performance, he's been recruited. Scottish Rugby employee Johnny Petrie has been put in as MD. And we're kind of deciding whether Alan McDonald's going to have to start drinking a little bit of Red Bull with his whiskies, as Gregor Townsend has been employed not by Newcastle Red Bulls, but by Red Bull themselves on an advisory side of things. With
remind me though, how many rugby teams do Red Bull have?
They only have one.
Yeah. So he's not working for them, but he's working for Red Bull, but they're the only rugby team.
It'll be an interesting one, Mark, because, obviously the minute Gregor Townsend, a shock removal from power for Steve Diamond. Obviously Edinburgh needing him back at some point, I don't know. But a shock removal from power by Steve Diamond, and then all of a sudden, immediately, Gregor Townsend's announced as this doing a job share at the moment, advising Red Bull on their rugby. It'll be a bit of an interesting one if he all of a sudden turns up in a couple of years after the World Cup as the Red Bull's new director of rugby.
Honestly, I'll be more interested if he doesn't. I think that would be the bigger surprise. I think this is him being lined up for his next job and him lining it up. I caught something, and unfortunately it was only the headlines, but because it was through a paywall, but the Telegraph published an article, I think just today. What date are we? No, it might have been yesterday then. Saying that Townsend is advising Newcastle on its recruitment and looking, amongst others, at Mr. Ben White. I don't think for a second that this is just an advisory capacity. This is him getting into his new role a year and a bit earlier.
This has strong feelings of a marriage that's coming to the end, and both parties are staying in it, even though they should end. And one of them goes, "Why don't we have an open relationship?" And they're teeing up their next relationship with it, and that is the feel I get from this. Gregor's a bit like, "Yeah, let's stay together for the sake of the kids until the World Cup, but let's have an open relationship." And he's fluttering his eyes at Newcastle. That's what it feels like.
Well, either that, or there could be the situation where there's going to be a Red Bull team in the URC. There's going to be a Red Bull team in the top 14. There's going to be a Red Bull team in the New Zealand leagues, etc. And Townsend is coming in as their new director of rugby operations when he finishes up at the World Cup, because we all kind of know that it looks like it's going to be Franco Smith is coming across to Scotland. You would think when he moves on.
I think you're right, and to extrapolate Alan's idea there a little bit, I suspect the SRU were seeing Franco on the side before we were talking in Newcastle.
Yeah.
Well, Franco was already their work wife, so to speak. So, I think it's informative that Franco's contract's a year longer than Gregor's, isn't it? that just seems like we're keeping the option to have you as Scotland boss.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
definitely. And then on other news within the SRU, Lee Radford is doing the same as Gregor Townsend, but in the defence side of things with Scotland. He's coming in. He's joining from a part job with Northampton Saints. So he's going to stay with Northampton Saints for this season, and then join Scotland immediately after that full time. But he's actually going to be advising on defence part time at the moment.
Yeah. Have either of you got any details about what that part time is? Is it? I mean, I have all I've heard is part time. I haven't heard whether it's 30 days a year like Tooney or whatever. Because it's not like we've got. Just let me check my notes. Argentina and New Zealand coming in the autumn.
Yeah, I think that's. I think I've got a feeling they'll probably not change defensive systems until those games are over, and they'll be preparing for the Six Nations. But it'll be an interesting one for me because, well, considering that the last few games I've watched Northampton Saints play, defence is sometimes optional. So I
to be fair, that's very on brand for us, isn't it?
It certainly is going to fit in perfectly well, Alan. But it seems to be, again, it's this whole thing of he's either strike. Well, for example, it strikes me as, well, first things first, I would have rather have seen Byron McGrigan come in, to be perfectly honest, because I think Byron McGrigan has been absolutely phenomenal at Sale Sharks. However, he's been snagged up by England. But it's this whole thing again of, I'll come and join you, but I can't come and join you until this time. Is he that good? Could we have got someone better full time straight away?
So I suppose, right, hear me out on this, and I realise I'm being a bit Pollyanna-esque, but
I thought you said polyamorous there for a second. I was thinking.
I mean, the rugby polyamory seems to be the order of the day with the coaching there. But no, Pollyanna, I'm sort of looking on the bright side. But Sale don't attack like Scotland do. Northampton Saints are a more attack-based team, and defence doesn't exist in a vacuum. Look at what happened after, not the last World Cup, the one before, when Tooney prioritised defence, and then suddenly we lost all our attacking flair. And watching Scotland was a less joyful experience, more successful but less joyful. And I think there's maybe that balance of attack and defence that Radford's used to working with. Maybe,
yeah, it could be.
So maybe that's why we're looking at him, trying to look at the most positive side of the argument.
Well, it's just, as I say, he's joining full time after the end of the season. So, we'll wait and see how he goes, and then we'll just have to hang on until Franco Smith comes in, and then everyone will be, the apple cart will be turned upside down, and all the other a load of new coaches will probably come in after that. So it'll be interesting to see.
It could be worse. We could have Scott Johnson in his place while he was seeing out his contract.
Yeah, well, we have lost our sevens, so I suppose it's Scott Johnson esque, I should say. And the last bit of news that I've got here, and you guys can maybe chase me up on it, something else, but Andy Rees-Jones has been announced as the first head of women's performance and pathway. He comes in as the head of Harlequins women's rugby in England. I have to say it's a plus point for me that obviously someone's been put in place as a head, and someone who's come from a fairly successful background with women's rugby. But what about you guys? What do you think, Alan?
I think just to echo what you're saying, I mean, I think Quins have been there or thereabouts as a women's team for a long time. That obviously Jade Conkle's thrived there. I think bringing someone in and having someone in place, and we must at some point, the law of averages states we must have someone involved in the pathways that turns out to be good. Surely, we haven't had anyone yet. High hopes for Al Kellogg, but David Nusifora hasn't exactly set the heather alight. So, hoping that Andy Rees Jones in the women's game will be that person.
Yeah, and Mark, there's a raft of people coming into this, or being promised to be coming into the Scottish women's pathway and women's teams, etc. First, but for me, I think one of the biggest recruitments should be, in my opinion, a new head coach. I would have thought.
Well, I was kind of surprised they were in a position to announce a pathways person before the head coach. They ought to be going after that person, but I do worry that it's almost like a few of these decisions are knee-jerk. Were they not speaking to somebody about a defence coach role, for example, the minute that Gatland was kicked out of Wales? Because Tandy was always in the frame.
Yeah.
There was people in Blue Sky talking about it basically the next day. And we've ended up with a guy that's part-time, he'll join us in a few months' time, who you rightly say is, are we really in the position where we're having to wait on somebody like that? It makes me wonder that they haven't really thought about this a lot in advance. And I wonder if it's the same with a women's coach. I do think Brian Eason's departure was precipitative. Who precipitated it, I don't know, but I don't think it was planned. But even so, they should be out there going all guns to get a coach in before they're worrying about the pathway person. I would.
Yeah, definitely. And I think because there's still a lot of work to be done with the Scottish women's team. But then the whole thing about part-time or coaches that are involved for up for a few sessions and then disappear away. Well, Nusifora set that up already because he came on board and then buggered off with the Lions. So it's kind of. But for me, it seems to, especially a defence coach. I think for example, Wales, Tandy goes in place to Wales and appoints Danny Wilson, and Danny Wilson goes, thanks very much, I'm gone. I'm really sorry. It's a really bad moment for me to leave, but I'm gone from Harlequins.
Yes.
And I think that, for me, is where I find it difficult because, yes, he's not even the head coach. Radford's not even the head coach of Saints. He's
a defence coach.
So are we in a situation where the Scottish Rugby are, dare I say it, being cheap and not want to pay out any severance money?
It depends on the contracts, doesn't it? And I suppose it also depends on how right the person is for the role. So if Lee Radford turns out to be even better than Steve Tandy and really make the role his own in the way that Tandy did, then waiting a season with him part-time is not a disaster. So if he's I suppose you have to get people when they become available. And it might be that Harlequins were happy to get because they had someone that they were ready to take over from Danny Wilson. So I don't know. I think you have to appoint talent when it becomes available, not letting a good person for the pathways job go because you haven't appointed a head coach yet. I don't know if that makes sense. I know that's one of these kind of things in the gut. Absolutely, you should start with the foundations and build up. You shouldn't be putting a roof in the house before the foundations are secure. But there's an element you have to get talent when it's available.
Yeah, absolutely. So, have you guys got any other news that you want to cover, or are we?
I don't think so. I think that's.
Yeah, well, we can go. Well, what I'll do is, I think we'll call it that at the moment for the public pod, because we are going to move over to our Patreon side and discuss Edinburgh, who are currently undefeated. in the URC, along with. Or did they get? No, it was. I thought it was a draw against Zebra, but did we get beat?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's just for anyone that's not watching the live stream, I'm being nodded at. So I've obviously my Edinburgh tinted glasses have totally and utterly. It's been a long couple of weeks. Give me a break. Okay?
That's my fault for saying that Edinburgh were undefeated this weekend. What I meant was they didn't lose this weekend.
Yeah, this weekend we're undefeated. That's a different story altogether. But we're going to move on to our Patreon side of things, where we're going to discuss obviously Glasgow. Glasgow v Benetton, the team that's been named for Edinburgh against Munster for this weekend, and also how serious Italian rugby really is, John Anderson. And then obviously at the end we will do our patented Hands in the Ruck as well. So if you ever wanted to join us for £3 a month plus of that, you can go to www.patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Pod. And you can become a member of our patrons and get extra content and a little bit extra from the pods. But for now, we will call it quits on this one and move over. Thank you so much for joining me, Allan and Mark. And for all of you out there in Podland, I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. It's been a little bit short and sweet today, but we'll move over to the Patreon side of things, and we hope to speak to you very soon.
Good morning, good evening, and good night.
Indeed.
Now you're just teasing.
I was expecting a jump scare when the door behind you creaked slowly, Craig.
No, maybe one of the dogs.
Was it one of your dogs?
Yeah, maybe one of the dogs. So do we close down these streams then, or do we?
Yeah, I will take out. They've actually changed this somewhere. Just I'll remove the Facebook.
No, is the Facebook one not the?
No, I'm on it now. I'll remove the thing. You remove everything except the
microphone
episode, the microphone one.
Okay.
Ryan will let us know if we're not on, because we weren't on YouTube for the Patreon bit the other couple of weeks ago.
All right. Well, we'll welcome to the Patreon part of the Scottish Rugby podcast. We can we'll rattle on and move on. It was a rather quick first half of the pod, I have to say, but there wasn't, apart from, we couldn't really say much about Tooney because we wanted to swear quite a lot. I would have thought. I think you've got. Let's just say that. We've had a few conversations on the messenger side of things about Tooney going to Red Bull or Newcastle Bulls or whatever you want to call them at the moment, and why did he not just fuck off the now? And but he seems to. I think they seem to think that they're building, but they've been building since he joined. So I'm kind of thinking, has he not built enough at Scotland?
We'll take the lessons, Craig, and we'll put that forward.
Take the learnings.
Oh, the learnings. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
And we'll have a real honest session the day after. Some hard truths were said. Completely forgotten, but they were said.
I'm just waiting on them coming into the Red Bulls, and they've got fireworks going off, and they've got like confetti, and they've got all these energy drinks behind them, and they've got a big bull that's mooing and everything behind them, and he goes, "All right, men, we're going to talk about
PowerPoint.
Muhammad Ali."
Gregor will take a video, because I was watching, could have been off, I've been watching a lot of Facebook reels. I made the mistake of watching like a downhill mountain biking point of view one all the way through, so now that's all I get shown up by the algorithm. But Gregor will take one of the most thrilling Red Bull Hardline Wales or Fort William point of views, and he will make it dull. He will make it boring. And I mean, to be fair, that is in itself a skill.
Yeah, he is the energy vampire of Scottish rugby. So he will do that. Anyway, we'll rattle through this quickly about Edinburgh. Edinburgh v Ulster was postponed at the weekend, as we alluded to. Edinburgh undefeated from the weekend. It's a difficult one because I think ultimately the game was playable, but you just didn't know that either the tenting or the something would come flying across the pitch, because it was a west to east wind, and if you remember with Mini Murrayfield or the Hive, it is fairly open to the wind. So I understand, and plus the fans travelling would be awfully dangerous for a lot of the fans to be travelling. So I suppose it's an interesting one. But yeah, this weekend, Munster v Edinburgh. Pardon me, a little bit of windy pops. Darcy and Duhan come back. They're both on the wings, but one of the interesting ones, the project player that is Dylan Richardson, who has been lining up for Scotland at hooker, is now 7 for Edinburgh, back in his old position of back row for his first cap for Edinburgh.
Yeah.
What? Where? When? What? Who?
I mean, I thought the whole idea of him coming to Edinburgh was that hooker was one of our weak spots. Because let's be perfectly honest, 7 is not. By we, I mean Scotland.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a little surprised. Is Hamish Watson, Connor Boyle, who else at Edinburgh?
Well, that's the thing. I was having a wee look here.
Douglas, yeah. No, Brian's just said Dylan at 7 seems like a kick in the teeth to Freddie. He's not wrong about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Freddie Douglas is on the bench. Muncaster's on the bench. Glenn Young, Paul Hill, Bowen Venter, and Paddy Harrison all on the bench for the game. They're going a 6-2 split on the bench. South African style, going down to Munster. But yeah, it's a real odd one because although they've got Luke Crosby has got hamstring, Charlie McCaig knee, Rhys Litterick Achilles, Ross Thompson with toe injury, Matt Curry head, Rob Carmichael wrist, Connor Boyle knee, Mosesi Tuipulotu knee. So those are the unavailable people. So yeah, I don't know. Have we been in this? Have we slowly bled away our great back rows of Edinburgh? And is this the issue, or what do you think?
I think some of the back rows were maybe not. They stood out because they weren't in a great team. Like Marcus Bradbury is a very good club level back row. He, apart from the odd game, he's an
outstanding back row for club.
Yeah, but he's never really made the step up to international level.
No.
And I suppose Freddie Douglas is hugely promising, but we at Munster, fairly early in his career, and him being the 7, there's a judgment there as to whether you risk damaging his confidence and damaging his growth by having him as your starting 7, whereas you put a grizzled turbo bastard like Dylan Richardson, who I think qualifies by birthright rather than project player, because he was playing for us when he was in South Africa.
I was meaning project as in he's been out in South Africa for some time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he came through in South Africa, and I think he started at 2, went to 7, and went back to 2. I think, but there's maybe something that just for this match, there's about having his turbo bastardry on the pitch, because he is in the best possible way. He looks a nasty bugger. And actually, away at Thomond Park, maybe that's the right thing to have on the pitch, and bring Freddie Douglas on later on in the game with tiring legs and, running at people. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, but again, Mark, kind of, that's the thing though. We talk regularly about Franco Smith and what he did at Benetton and then Italy with the young players. And you look at, for example, Edinburgh before Sean Everett came along, but Edinburgh has been well known for not giving younger talent chances, because you just look at Charlie Shield. Everyone keeps telling us that Charlie Shield needs to develop a bit more, and you forget he's about 26. And it's like Charlie Shield has always just been in the background at Edinburgh. Talk about someone who needs to go and actually get some proper game time at another club. But surely the Noosa 4 away is to start bringing these youngsters through. And why is Edinburgh not doing this?
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't know why Edinburgh isn't doing this. I'm very conscious of Franco starting Kerr Yule in the midfield. Just turned 20-year-old Kerr Yule in the midfield in the first game of the season, at home, albeit, but against a South African team where he was facing up to Lukanyuan. That's thrown him in at the deep end. Equally, I seem to recall the conversation when I can't remember if it was I think it might have been Jamie Dobie when he got his first Scotland cap, and people saying, but every time he's been offered a step up, he has taken it and looked like he's to the manor born. Nobody at Edinburgh's been given that opportunity. I take your point about maybe Freddie Douglas, rather than throw him in at the deep end at Munster, but why not? The guy has been a standout player in our under-20s who, to be fair, have had their arses kicked from pillar to post in every tournament. He's going to be fine going to Thomond Park.
Yeah, agreed. But I suppose it's a 23-player game, so maybe for this game, particularly tactically, there's a thought that Douglas comes on later, and when the game's opening up a bit. Maybe I'm trying to push. I suppose I'm trying to push the alternate point here rather than. I'm not sure I believe it. I think it may be same old Scotland being a bit tentative and not promoting youth. But I suppose what would the counter argument be? And it's that. I think.
Yeah. And you've got three very good players in Ashman, Richardson, and Paddy Harrison, all in the same position. Are they trying to get them all on the pitch?
We're all old enough to remember the arguments when people like Brendan Laney were just brought over from New Zealand and dropped straight into the Scotland side. And what effect? So I suppose there's a counter argument there, like, let's give Ashman a chance as the holder of the jersey. Let's not destroy his confidence by taking him out immediately, putting Richardson in. That's what the autumn internationals are for. So, I still feel that the last Six Nations or struggles at hooker meant that Dylan Richardson's strengthened his claim to be a first choice hooker without playing a game.
Yeah, indeed. Funnily enough, the Zebra game, Edinburgh only lost 2 lineouts, I think, and one of them was an overthrow. The other one was a missed jump or something like that. It was not Ashman's fault.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe his yips are limited to the Scotland shirt.
Maybe he's got past it. Maybe they've found it strikes me that line out throwing and goal kicking are the two things that are closest to golf shots.
Yeah, big time.
Because you're not reacting, you're stopped in the moment and just trying to execute, and that's when you can get in your own head.
Yeah.
When you're reacting, sometimes it's a lot easier, weirdly. So, have they got, a performance coach working with them, and have things been so much better that like actually you've earned your chance to keep your shot, but we need Dylan in the side for this because he's an experienced player and, let's stress, turbo bastard in the best possible way.
Yeah.
Dylan moves up the BQ.
Yeah, and to be perfectly fair to Ashman, when certain members of the rugby public were jumping up and down, rugby public and rugby online punditry were jumping up and down about Ashman getting on the lines and not Dowie Lake. I went and did a little bit of homework on the various match stats and all that sort of thing. And Ashman's stats across the Six Nations per game were better considerably than any hooker, any of them. The only thing he seemed to have the problem with was the line-out throws.
But the problem is with the line-out, you're so exposed.
His tackle completion, his defenders beaten, his meters made after contact and all that were absolutely phenomenal. They were well ahead of Lakes.
Okay.
Well, if you can't do hooker stuff at hooker, you've got to take those slings and arrows, I suppose. As far as I'm concerned, you do your basics right, and then the rest follows. And he has consistently not performed at hooker.
I don't know if the scrum halves throwing in like the French used to have back in the day.
Absolutely, yeah.
Have we George Horn Berbizier?
The wingers used to throw in the line out, didn't they? The one-handed throw from the winger.
Oh, I've thrown a couple of one-handed throws in my time, but that was when you didn't lift anyone. So that shows immediately dates me.
I know it's a bit of an aside, but did either of you see the video that went about in Blue Sky of I think it was the French putting Bourdon Sansus into the line out and her taking the ball? The scrum half, because basically her locks just threw her up in the air. She went 15 feet up because she's tiny.
We used to do that at the Quins as well, put the lightest person up in the air because you could get them higher.
Quite amazing to watch, and they executed it perfectly. It was really, really cleverly done.
Well, we'll wait and see. Edinburgh travel to Cork, or have travelled to Cork, and they're at the Virgin Media Park tomorrow night. Actually, it'll be an interesting game. Cork is a much, what's the word? I've been down there. It was not called the Sports Ground, but I'm sure it used to be called something else. And I've got a good couple of friends down in Cork, definitely Munster fans, and one used to play for Munster many years ago. And they tell you, boy, that's some place to come down to, And I'm sorry, that was a Jamaican accent, but it's
honestly, don't try a Cork accent because it is unique. Have you heard that song with the kids in Cork? Think you can stop what we do? I doubt it. And it's just again, having said no to the Cork accent, I tried, but
you tried, but we try our best. Luckily, it's behind the paywall, so we're not upsetting anybody too much. See, everyone, you get great content behind the paywall. But yeah,
it's waiting the people that are already paying.
I know. It's just like I'm trying to get them to stay. But it'll be an interesting one, especially a Friday night in the dark. As long as it's not as bad weather as it was last season. When they had that miraculous wind, but I think the wind was blowing fairly heavy down there. Funnily enough, a tip of the cap does go to Sean Everett because he's picked Ben Healy at 10 to start when he revisits Munster. So we'll wait and see how that goes and how his welcome is. And one last thing, just as we're talking about it. Who out of the two do you think has the most caps for Edinburgh? Darcy Graham or Duhan van der Merwe?
So my question spotting self would look at this. Would meta that game this, Craig? And I would say the fact you're asking us means it must be Duhan, which is mad. But
it is Duhan van der Merwe at 104. Darcy Graham 83. Ben Vellicott has 76 caps for Edinburgh. it shows you how much unfortunate issue with his family that he had really cost him, how much he's away with Scotland, and how much he has been injured lately. And it really is quite interesting. You know, Magnus Bradbury's managed to go away for 2 years, come back and still have over 50 caps more just under 50 caps more than Darcy Graham, which is quite an eye opener for me. I never even thought about it. No, it is over 50 caps. Over 50.
I love how you're having an argument with maths about yourself, Craig.
Because I'm shite at maths, so that's I'll have to have an argument with me. I've just got my maths teacher in my head going, "You're counting that wrong." And anyway, but yeah, so there we go. Moving on to unserious rugby and an unserious country for rugby and an unserious team in the name of Benetton, who took on Glasgow Warriors at the weekend. Now, Glasgow 14, Benetton 16. Glasgow snatched defeat from the jaws of victory at the end, with Benetton actually... Well, I was watching Sale at the weekend as well. A cheeky wee drop goal just at the end there, and from Rhino, I think it was Rhino Smith. I think was it that put it all over, taking the win. Now, I know that Glasgow. Well, it was Edinburgh that had a lot of injuries, but has Glasgow got a lot of injuries just now, guys? I've not really.
Not too bad. That was a solid Glasgow team.
Yeah.
Kyle Stein was back. Sione was back. They're missing Hugh Jones, but they still had Stafford McDowell outside of him. Dobie and Horn were the start and then bench scrum half, respectively. You could argue they're missing Jack Dempsey is their biggest loss next to Hugh Jones.
I would argue actually the biggest loss is Zander.
Of course, yeah. Yeah.
Because speaking about not serious people, Sam Talakai seems a very nice chap, but he does not seem a serious tight head prop at this level.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Yeah.
Yeah,
and Finn Richardson's got a lot to learn.
Who?
Finn Richardson.
Finn Richardson, yeah. Well, it's interesting. There was a couple of tries. Obviously, Josh Mackay proving Johnny McGinty and John's insistence that he will soon be pushing Blair King on for the 15 jersey in Scotland. Scored has the wheels on him on Saturday. Was it Saturday or was it Friday? Anyway,
it was Saturday.
Scored a really nice try, and then this guy who just Jari Ogunte Biju.
Ogunte Biju,
yeah. Just an absolute superstar. I think he's going to be phenomenal for Glasgow.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I don't often criticise Franco Smith, but I think he made changes too early, and one of the changes he made too early was taking Jarry off. The guy was still absolutely full of energy, and he was all over the park. I was very struck by a picture. I rewatched 3/4 of the match earlier on today, and I was very struck by the fact that when the Italians ran the cameraman ran the pictures down the bench where the guys had been subbed off, and they were sitting there, the front row sitting there looking knackered, and Big Jarry was still standing up, and he was kind of edging to get back on again,
Yeah.
And if he's still full of that amount of energy, keep him on. 6'8" and 19.5 stone. More of that, please.
And can shift. He's not.
Oh, yeah.
It's, the thing about 19.5 stone makes you think tubby, but when it's stretched over a 6'8" frame, and he's muscular as hell, I think when you look at the subs, I've got the team sheet up. They basically made a load of changes. They changed the tight five pretty much at the same time.
Yeah.
And
would that be about that was probably about 52 minutes?
Oh, Mark, 53 minutes is the time for the substitution. Right. Superb. That's professionalism you bring.
Absolutely. Anybody be thinking I wrote this down. But yeah, right after the Italian first try, and Glasgow seemed to tank after that. And I think that was a mistake on Franco's part.
He came off for Matt Williams, Williamson.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, actually, we'd have been like arguing. Williamson's the one with Scotland caps that actually, it's not that bad a swap.
Well, that's the thing, though. Looking at the two players that came on in the boiler room, in Scott Cummings and Max Williamson, you would expect them to shore things up incredibly well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you would turn around and think that's a Glasgow bomb squad if I've ever seen one. I'll talk about the forwards in a minute, the front row in a minute. But
yeah. So I think the front row is where the problem is, because you chicken wing and Talakai.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in essence, you should say that, you know, that certainly shouldn't be a drop off between the first choice and second choice in the second row. But for
you can argue Max Williamson would be more first choice than Oguntobeju.
Absolutely.
As stand. I don't think that's right, but I think as things stand, you could make a cogent argument for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. But I think part of the challenge, and I still do worry about the way this happens across lots of sports internationals, lots of rugby and international level particularly, is the disruption to the team. And I know you've all been training together. I know you've all been playing together. But when you're in a game and actually in the heat of the moment for 40, 50 minutes, you have a feel for the game. You have a feel for you're all playing. You do not play exactly the same every game as an individual, let alone as a team. People have good days. People have bad days. People have amazing days. And you get to know what these people are doing. Changing all that up at 50 minutes is like starting the game again.
I think it's one of those situations where you've got to look at it. You know, I see it slightly differently because I feel that if I was in Franco's position, I would be doing very. I'll come back to the replacements in a second, but I'd be doing a very similar thing to him. These early games, you can lose a few of them because it's the last half of the season that you really want to start performing, and you want. But the last half of the season, you've got Six Nations where a lot of your star players disappear. So you have to have these players that have been brought in playing to that level that you expect. So you want to have them, bloodied in very, very early, and you want them to be playing regularly and doing these games, because we laugh about it all the time. But I will say this once again. Benetton are a serious team, and they, both Scottish teams, and I think if I remember correctly, the third Scottish team, Newcastle Red Bulls, when they were Falcons, tripped over Benetton as well in one of the cups they played in as well. So Benetton are a strong team, and they just unfortunately suffer from what I would probably point at the French maybe about 10 years ago, and the French teams is they go missing every so often. And that's why you get these bad games with them. But you look at some of these players, for example, Dan Lancaster. Get him in because Hastings is probably going to disappear fairly soon off to the Autumn Nations camp. He may not be playing, but because Fergus Burke's there now as well, and people like that. But you have got Hastings, who probably has a good chance of disappearing to the Scotland camp. So, you want these players playing, and you want them going off to a game in Italy on a crappy night to get the experience, I guess. But it's a very disappointing game for Glasgow to lose. But on the other, especially when they're supposed to be this high-level team. But what you will find is I'm not surprised they lost, because Benetton are the banana skin of the URC.
They lost quite a bit. They lost, other than the second row, it was a net loss of experience with the substitutions.
Yeah.
So Williamson and Cummings, George Horn, but Schickerling, Hiddleston, Talakai, and later Dan Lancaster. So it was a net loss of experience.
But when you say experience, I guess I think I may paraphrase you a little bit, or I may talk on your behalf, Alan. But it's only experience playing for Glasgow, because these guys have all played. Dan Lancaster's played in at the top level in the top 14, which I would say is a big hitting.
But for Racing in a bad season.
Yeah, well, there is that.
I
But then
think
Schickerling have played for the Racists. You know, he played for Exeter for a long time.
Net loss of leadership.
Yes. Okay.
Net loss of leadership. And actually, Max Williamson is a very fine player who plays with his heart on his sleeve, but he's a young lad and probably doesn't supply a huge amount of leadership. Cummings is the exception. On a slightly different tack with a sidebar, is anyone getting Jordi Cruyff energy from Adam Hastings? No, just me. Just sort of not living up to the famous dad.
Well, that was going to be a question for you, and I'll ask that question in a second. Just to go back to timings for replacements, that I think is, I find it's a very South African thing to do nowadays, because they bring on the bomb squad quite early. But for me, I think something should come in. They were talking about doing something about limiting replacements and stuff like that. I would far rather have a time limit for replacements, as in you cannot tactically replace a player until at least 60 minutes is gone. Because I think you're breeding these players who can only perform at high level for 50 minutes and then they start dropping off. You look at a lot of the South African players. You look at a lot of for example, what's his name, the big Will Skelton and people like that, who have only got 45, 50 minutes in them. Now, okay, they're dragging a fucking hoorah size of person around with them, but these are people that I think it's the same. What's the big lad from the Tongan prop, Ben
Tamifune.
Tamifune. Yeah. Now he's a 40, 50 minute as well. And I just think it's something that we should really be knocking out the game, because you're then getting to the stage where you've got these defensive units that are out there. I think if you've seen is it Leicester Tigers or Northampton Saints that have brought this South African across, whose second row, 127 clicks. He's a massive boy. And first of all, I'm not lifting him in the bloody line out, but he's
I lift yourself, pal.
But you've got these big units that are coming at you at full charge. You're going to get injuries from these big lads, and the less time they get to play. If they're playing for 50 minutes, they bulk up bigger, because you can then build these guys to, scrummage and to make holes in defences and give everything for 45, 50 minutes. Then you have to take them off because they're absolutely done. And I just think I'd like to see my forwards be a little bit more runny abouty than lifting fucking massive heavy weights all the time.
Yeah.
Craig, is a 14, 15-minute player I feel attacked.
It depends on the weather for me. It was I used to if it was pissing down with rain, I was an 80-minute player, because I used to love just rolling around in the mud. But if it was dry and my knees were sore because the ground was so bad, I'd be off for 10 minutes for a wee drink of water. And luckily, in the over 35 stuff I played, we got rolling subs, so I could come on and off and everything. And I would drift onto the wing and then just slip off the side of the park and push someone else on. But yeah, just coming back to your question, Alan, and this has been in my mind as well. Are we seeing, with Fergus Burke, with Lancaster, who's Scottish qualified coming through, etc., are we seeing the last chances of Hastings? Is Hastings a great team player, not a great Scotland player?
I think it's probably, given his unluckiness with injuries, etc. I think it would be harsh to comment on that too much right at the moment. And I know it was me that raised this, so that's slightly hypocritical. But I think what we can say with certainty is we are going to be seeing the mettle of Adam Hastings as an international player, and it is time to shit or get off the pot for him. I think he needs to put up or shut up. And then I don't mean that in a harsh way. I don't think he's talked himself up, etc. But I think he's got a competition now to be Finn's second that wasn't there before, and he's really going to have to push himself.
Yeah. For me, he's just not been the same player since he came back from Gloucester. And whether that's down to injuries, because he has had a few pretty nasty ones, or he's just changed his playing style and gone into himself a wee bit. But I mean, remember back before I was involved, you guys used to talk about the cats at the rave. Let's get Finn in at 10 and Hastings at 12, or vice versa, because that'll be mental, right? And I'm not seeing that. Finn's never lost that invention.
Yeah, I think
seems to have.
I would say I think actually I don't know, because he was injured. I was going to say I think Tom Jordan really did Adam Hastings no favour. And we're now looking at this stage of you've got Finn Russell, and then you have a choice of Adam Hastings, Fergus Burke, Tom Jordan. You've also got Ross Thompson coming through at Edinburgh as well, who's playing very, very well for Edinburgh at the moment. You've still got the project player that is... no, he's not a project player because he qualifies on Granny or something like that. But the Irish player I've just mentioned, and I've totally said it's gone right. Ben Healy as well. Now, obviously, Ben Healy has been properly kind of just fucked over by Edinburgh, but that's a different story altogether. But, you've got all these 10s that are circulating around, and if Finn Russell went down, God forbid, who fits into there? Because obviously Fergus Burke got a massive chance over the summertime, and seemed to fit into that role quite well. Seemed to be okay, but I don't think he's an invention player like Finn is. Whereas Adam Hastings, just so you say, was a real invention player. Was a out of the same mould as Finn Russell, but he doesn't seem to. He hasn't. The Gloucester trip hasn't helped him build this all-round game that maybe Finn Russell built when he went to Racing.
I think there's also, I think injuries, injuries affect up here as well as, sorry, I tapped my head. Sorry, I just realised that not everyone's going to be watching it.
For those of you watching in black and white.
Yes, the brown ball's behind the pink. But I think, injuries affect the top 2 inches of your head as well as everywhere else.
Okay.
And I think, has it been that he just hasn't had the same conviction? Look, Finn's an exception rather than the rule. Finn has really done the Kipling poem of meeting triumph and disaster and treated both imposters just the same. That's the exception rather than the rule. Most of us get cowed by our failures. Most of us go into ourselves a little bit. Is it fair to judge Adam Hastings by the standards of a Finn? Because Finn is very much an exception, because Finn just stays being Finn, and that is very much like all the people that complain about him laughing when he misses touch completely miss the point. Finn stays Finn, And it's like the Borsellino hat. You can roll it up, pass it through a ring, and then take it out, and it stays the same. Things like that, and that is quite something in terms of human nature, etc. And I don't think he's arrogant with it. I just think his sense of self is incredibly psychologically healthy, and we probably shouldn't judge other people for not being exceptional like that.
I also do wonder a wee bit if it's coaching, that when you take the likes of Hastings and Fergus Burke, perhaps, who knows, you said he's not an invention player, Ben Healy, maybe their natural game is getting coached out of them. Maybe Hastings' natural game was to be the invention player, and it has been coached out of him successively by Townsend and at Gloucester. I can't remember who his coach was at the time. And Finn just goes, no.
Yeah.
Sorry, no.
And I think also you've got to. We also have to remind ourselves, and we have to remind ourselves on a regular basis, that Finn Russell is a once in a generation player for Scotland. He's come through. He is now, right now, he is one of the 3 top 10s in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, he could, if he was playing for New Zealand or if he was playing for South Africa, he would be getting a World Player of the Year award at this moment in time. He doesn't qualify for that because Scotland don't do so well. And when I say he doesn't qualify, he should be getting a World Player of the Year at some point, because he is at that point, in my humble opinion, he is someone who, and just as you've mentioned, all of these other players that we mentioned as are Scotland 10s are probably 50% behind Finn Russell in talent and gameplay, etc. But then Finn Russell has been around now for a long time. And if you're given the keys and said, right, go crack on with Scotland, because really that's what Townsend's tried to be the big I am and says, right, Finn, you're not the most talented guy. You're the third most. You're the third in line 10 for Scotland. You've drunk too many pints. You're this and that and the other. I'm the boss here. And Finn Russell's going, oh, so you fucking think so? And it's all clicked back into now they're all best pals.
But that was never about him being that place in the squad. That was about him. And I feel for Gregor in this one, because Finn left the squad hotel and went home to his parents. His mum and dad picked him up and took him home. He left the camp when they thought things were sorted. It's really difficult. It's not about the third beer, it's about the reaction after it. You're both parents, you know that. It's never about the fight, or the first hit, it's about the reaction after
That's
it.
how you deal with it,
Yeah. And actually, if Gregor's running the kind of camp where you're like, there's no superstars, how do you manage that? How do you manage, your top star having what is a bit of a tantrum? The
thing is, though,
so you drop him, but you don't say that you've dropped him. You say other people, because people will go mad. And actually, I think Gregor did the right thing, because I don't think he had a lot of choices. So by dropping him, but not saying he's dropped him, Gregor gets ridiculed. But actually, the situation gets resolved and his authority isn't undermined.
Yeah, I guess you're right enough that it wouldn't happen right now, because Finn Russell is probably twice the player he was at that point, because he's going through the Racing time and then coming into Bath. And if you look at the coaches he's been involved with, the players that he's been involved with now, playing for, no disrespect to Glasgow and to Scotland, but if you look at the players, you just need to take Kinghorn, for example, as an example. He's gone to Toulouse and he is surrounded by the best, so he's going to have to perform to the best, and he does. And I think that's at that time when Finn Russell was there, that Racing team, he was surrounded by some of the top players in the top 14. They didn't do very much, but I'll even say this, and I can hear John Anderson shouting from the background probably pretty easily, but even having Zebo out there, Zebo was one of the best wingers out there for a long time.
Yeah.
He was maybe on his way out at that point, but he had Fiku and he had he had some phenomenal players playing in that team, which have obviously brought him on. And now look at him. He's got basically Bath could turn up with their thirds and slap everyone around in the Prem.
I think also there's the element of the perspective. There's a couple of things. Finn knows how good he is, and I don't mean that in an arrogant way. Finn knows how good he is and how he needs to be recognised for the talent that he has. So there's an element that he has to play for Scotland so that he can be recognised as the talent that he undoubtedly is. But there's also, I think, has being a dad added perspective. Certainly added it for me at work. You've got whatever's happening at work, and then you come home and you've got to be there for your kid. Has that helped him?
That's where I went wrong.
Well, that's true for me.
That's not true, Rudy, Kira, if you're listening. That's not true.
Can I postulate that the bigger event for Finn in his role as Scotland standoff was not the Beergate stuff. It was the 30 all Calcutta Cup match. I think I've had this in my head for a wee while. Am I right in saying, Alan, you've never watched Game of Thrones?
No, I've watched all of Game of Thrones.
Why did I even expect that? Craig, are you aware of it?
Yeah, I've watched them all.
Right. So there's a story.
Just because I was told there was tits and dragons, and
what's not to like? Right?
There's a lot more tits before the dragons came, but yeah.
So I'll explain it as if people in the outside world listening to this might not know it. One of the key areas is up north of the country they're all living in, this place, Westeros, and the family that rule up there are the Starks, and they all speak with Northern English accents, right? The story behind that...
Just a quick busted. That's just because I love Sean Bean.
Busted. Yeah. I've been listening to those all the Sharp books on audiobook recently, actually. However, and that's entirely the point, right? Sharp was written as a Londoner, but Sean Bean he's from up north, right? Because it's Sean Bean. And apparently what happened when he went to get cast for Ned Stark in Game of Thrones, who's the Lord, for those of you that don't know, he's the Lord of the North.
Winterfell.
Yeah. They said, you do receive pronunciation, BBC English basically. Sean, can you do receive pronunciation? And he said, no. So everybody else spoke with a Northern accent. They had to get everybody else speaking the same accent as him because he's the guy they wanted. And I wonder if it's the same with Finn either. And what happened in 2019 was Tooney was going, Finn, can you play like this? And Finn's going, no. And Tooney's making everybody else play like that except Finn. And everybody else actually got on board with Finn's game, and we came back into that. And I wonder if what's happened now is Tooney's realised he needs them all speaking the same accent. And it's Finn's accent.
I'm not going to lie, I was really worried that wasn't going to come to a coaching point, but that's brilliant. I completely agree.
Not that we've ever totally not really missed a point completely on the.
That's usually me.
Yeah. And I wonder if it's as simple as that. Finn, there's no point in coaching your game into Finn. This is the way Finn plays. And I think Van Graan's got it down at Bath.
I don't think so. I think that's largely true, but not entirely true. I think Finn is coachable. I just think that Townsend had to learn to give up a bit of control
There's degrees.
to Finn on the pitch, and Finn. And there was an element that Greg Laidlaw was the coach on the pitch, back in those days, and now you get the feeling that Finn's the coach on the pitch. Finn's the player that calls the shots. Yeah.
Funny enough, though, at Bath, I actually think that Finn plays what he brings, all he brings, but I do believe Ben Spencer is the boss, and I think they may co-parent, I suppose, but Ben Spencer and Finn Russell play a very, very similar game, and I think that they tend to be going in the same direction.
So thinking about a first win at Twickenham, you think about when Finn was off, and Ali Price sort of like ran the game from 9. I think Finn does work well with a game managing 9.
Yeah.
He worked well with Greg Laidlaw. I think, and he works well with Sione outside him. I don't think he's a selfish player with game management. I think, but he needs people that are on the same wavelength. And Sione and Ben White are, on a similar wavelength. It's Finn's world, and we all just get to live in it, and that's okay.
I've always said in the early days, when Finn was coming through and really becoming the player that he is, his best games were with Pete Horn outside him, a second playmaker, basically.
Yeah, and that's where he is.
A mature head and a second playmaker.
Yeah.
Gregor Laidlaw was at his best with John Leslie outside him.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but John Leslie went off the rails, and and all that stuff with the Ulrika Johnson and everything. It just ruined a player. Anyway, so on that note,
we'll not receive John Leslie for legal reasons.
Not John Leslie before anyone says anything. John Leslie played for Scotland. Anyway, we will move on to, I think, Mark, are you ready to pull the plug on this one, even though you hate
it? Yeah, go for it.
All right, we're going to go with this. Or am I doing it? Are you doing it?
Sorry. I don't even know how to run the jingles.
Oh, right, okay. Well, I'll just do this then. I had it all lined up.
No one makes me run the jingles. I'm not in charge.
Give me a couple of seconds. Right, we'll go with this. It's that time of night. I was promised a drunk John Anderson tonight for Hands in the Ruck, but it's not happened. So we'll go with a slightly smoky and oak casked Alan McDonald for Hands in the Ruck. What's your Hands in the Ruck tonight, Alan?
Prop development. We touched on it earlier with Xander Fagerson. Why have we not developed another Xander? And I think the answer is Xander wasn't developed. He was a young prop young tight head that was thrown in because VP Nell had a neck injury, and actually, against all the odds, he swam rather than sank. And the problem is that we now don't have a reliable way to bring through props. When you think about most of our props, most of the good ones have been developed in other systems and then come through being project players or being picked up. And we need to develop props. And I don't know why we're not doing it, but we need to work that out and sort it.
I fully, we've had this conversation before. We had a lot of, I've got experience of it. Of a player not wanting to play prop because nobody wants to play front row because of the what everyone tells them, that it's just big lads that go around and hit things, and they want to be back rows. They don't want to be second rowers. They don't want to be front rowers, and I understand that. Where I think the problem has gone the opposite direction is that I've seen a lot of players being developed. You know, I've seen two players I know who have gone through the youth system, and they've just been basically, they were bigger lads, as in their frames were bigger.
Mm-hmm.
But like after a season of getting close to adult rugby and after a season going through the pathway with Scotland, I meet them and it's like they're a different person. It's like they've just put an air tube up one of their orifices and blown them up. They're massive, massive big lads. And you think to yourself, hang on, now Scotland seem to be, or they were in their pathway, just looking for big lads and they weren't looking for skill levels. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, we all talk about players, etc. But you look at Tom Smith, for example, Tom Smith was an incredible all-round player, great hands, lots of speed, and he propped, and he used his size to, and from what I can see and what I feel, you know, I could get any size of player propping well. In my opinion, I'm not saying I'm a fantastic coach. I'm just saying that you can build the confidence and build a player into a good prop, and they don't have to be have a neck as wide as their head, you know. And I just feel that they seem to just go down this route of developing these players, trying to make these players bigger than they should be, and then they're getting injured. I think we have gotten over. You know, we are putting a massive amount of over reliance on Xander Ferguson, especially at tight head. And I think you're right. Who are the next props coming through? Because Murphy Walker ain't, because he seems to be here and there and, you know, not scratching the surface. You know,
I think he's falling prey to becoming fairly constantly injured, and I think you're right. I think it's, to use a different position, the Warburton problem. You're extending people's bulk beyond their natural frame, and that's going to lead to huge damage on ligaments and strains on tendons, etc. Just because they're carrying much more musculature than they were designed to carry. And like every pro rugby player is going to carry a bit more. That's just the way of it. But if you make people massively bigger, then that's going to lead to injuries.
Yeah.
It's the chat earlier about you know, the fact that these guys are you know, 120 plus kilos in second rows and stuff like that, because you can sub them off after 50 minutes. I read something, I can't remember, maybe about a year ago. I'm sure they were talking about the Bear, Ian Milne, right? Who we all know, phenomenal tight head, absolutely the best in the UK by some degree at one point. His playing weight was something like 17.5 stone.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't make the back row now.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean,
because he had to go for
amateur days, the proportion of fat to muscle was different.
Indeed, but also you had to play for 80.
Yeah, true.
Otherwise you were injured.
Yeah.
And you can't run 22 stone around for 80 minutes consistently week in, week out, and
I would struggle for 18 minutes, Mark.
Great.
I've never heard that. That's slanderous. Never heard that at all. But anyway, Mark, have you got any hands in the up today?
Yeah, let me just check my list. Two actually. Both of them from the Glasgow game. The one that I know we've discussed it before, but who the hell is Matt Ferguson, and why does he still get played for Glasgow? Come on, commentators, it's not Ferguson. I mean, they managed to get Alan Alatoa, okay, when he's playing. They managed to get Tammy Funa, no problem, but they can't get Ferguson. It's not hard.
There's not even the R before the G. There's not even the R before the G.
It's just like, come on. Ferguson's playing really well. Who the hell is he? I was looking for a player for Benetton. Anyway, but the other one that I thought, I haven't seen any mention of it. And I saw it again when I watched the game back. When Benetton scored their first try, 51 minutes or thereabouts, Menoncello goes over in the corner just as Staines tapping him. And as Menoncello's getting up with the ball, he launches it at Staines' head. Like that. And you didn't get any replays, funnily enough. I don't know how the Italian camera crew missed that one. But I think it was one of our players on the spot went straight at Menoncello, and the linesman had seen it and was on breaking it up. But we didn't get any replays. And I was like,
that's one where you almost have to go and punch the player so the referee looks at it, isn't it?
Goes back and looks at it. Yeah. It's an odd one because
at least shove him.
I'm not suggesting they would disallow the try. However, I think it's in the laws. You restart with a penalty.
Yeah.
And I think that's completely valid.
Yeah.
I've seen that done against Peoples, funnily enough, years ago at club level.
Coming up for me, but yeah.
But it was an odd one. It was so quick. I would like to have seen replays, but definitely, I'm 99.9% sure that's what I saw happen. Because one of the Glasgow players went after him immediately.
Yeah.
And it's like, just because he scored, you should still be looking at that, particularly if it was the head. You know?
Yeah. Oh, I'm a massive. I fucking hate people that dive on players when they're scoring tries and stuff like that as well. Though, I find that's still happening. Even though they're not going in with their knees or their feet anymore, but they're still jumping on folk, and that just does my fucking head in. Because there's many a time you see try scorers getting picked up by their teammates, and they're still lying on the ground because they've taken a bang to the head or they've taken a bang to the shoulder.
That's why that penalty went against Peebles at the time. They had a winger who was young. I think he was Australian, but he wasn't shy a few unsavoury digs, and he went down with an elbow on a guy who had just scored. And it was way late. I mean, it was a back and rights penalty. The guy should have walked, frankly. But
yeah.
An Australian being unsporting when they're losing, surely some mistake.
Don't know what you're talking about. I'm saying nothing about it. My hand in the ruck this week is just again the hoo-ha about Newcastle Red Bulls and the English press and pundits up in arms that they think it's going to be a third Scotland team or Scottish team, and how it's going to be it will detract away from the Prem, and it's terrible, and it's this and it's that and the other, and it's like, well, hang on a minute. First of all, you've got to have, if I'm right in saying, of your 23 that you match the squad, 18 of them have to be qualified as English.
I think it's 15 in your squad for the season, Craig.
Yeah.
I think it's 15 on a match day, I think.
I thought it was 15 on a match day, but
15 out of your 23 need to be English qualified.
You know.
Yeah, I suppose you could get around that though with the uncapped Fraser Dingwalls of this world, you know.
Yes, and those you've got to remember all your youngsters as well that have maybe played for Scotland in under 18s and under 20s still are uncapped or English qualified because they can still go and play international rugby. For the seniors,
for example.
Yeah. But I just think it's like, Danny Kerr especially was moaning about it on the podcast that he does, and it's like, well, hang on a minute, you've just seen this massive injection of money come into your sport. Hopefully it's going to be the first of many that are going to bring this Premiership or the Prem that they're now talking about. It's going to get to a situation where they don't lose 3 teams in a season for money problems.
Don't get me wrong. If Red Bull had come and bought Edinburgh, I'd have been doing cartwheels. And that's no mean feat, by the way.
Yeah. Oh well, listen. That would be perfect. And if they wanted to bring Townsend in as the Red Bull, I'd still not want that. No, that's anyway. But I just think it's this whole thing of, they're taking away from the Prem. They're not, and it's like the natural place for Newcastle to get their players from. And if you look at, for example, the successful Newcastle team in the Premiership all those years ago that won the Premiership, people like Doddy Weir were playing for them. They had a lot of Scottish players playing for them because they didn't have to leave home. They could, because most of them obviously came to the Borders at that time anyway. But it was just an hour or an hour and a half's commute.
Gary Armstrong, one of the biggest names in Newcastle rugby history, isn't he?
Absolutely.
It's almost like the closer you are to the border, the less the border matters to you, isn't it?
Yes. Well, that's it. It seems to be. Although we have to discuss Cammy and his love-hate relationship with the Borders as well. But that's
weird.
Yeah, Berwick is just weird.
Cammy zigzagged the borders more than Robert the Bruce did.
And he's not. I've not seen him have his face painted once. I don't. No, sorry, that was Wallace. He did. Cammy has sacked a few joints in York before, but that's a different story. I don't know. I just think it's the usual thing of the minute there's a sniff of, first things first. The Welsh we're talking about these two teams that might get dropped by the Welsh Rugby Union merging into the English Premiership, so it's an Anglo-Welsh league, and there's nobody turning around going, "This is terrible, this is blah 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 blah." So what the fuck is it? I really do think it's Danny Keir doesn't fucking like Scottish people and Scotland teams, so he can go fuck right off anyway.
But Danny Keir just loves a moan, doesn't he? He just loves a moan.
Yeah.
Scrum half who loves a whine about stuff. Really?
They are the Jack Russells of the rugby world, aren't they? They're just yappy wee dogs.
Well, maybe he just needs
to be locked in a room the same as the dogs.
Yeah, neutered and sent out to go and hunt rabbits. I don't know, but anyway. On that note, I think we've rambled on for over an hour in the Patreon side of things. The new Patreon people think that you don't get enough out of us sometimes. I tell you that. But God love you, and thank you again for joining us tonight. It's been a bit of a hodgepodge, and I apologise. My notes weren't as good as they have been, but that will get better over the next few weeks, and we'll bring you more and more, and hopefully be a little bit more regular for all our patrons and also the everyone who listens that aren't patrons. But thank you again for being with us tonight. Big thanks to both Allan and Mark. Thanks for coming on, lads. And it's a good night from me and a good night from both these gentlemen.
Other times of day are available.
Oh, for fuck's sake. People are going to start thinking I'm doing this on purpose and this is going to be my thing. It's not my thing. I'm just fucking stupid. That's all it is.
I've enjoyed doing the BBC. Other magazines are available.
You know what it is? I'm tired. And when we record at this time of night, it's 10 past 10 at night. And I'm tired like this. It's just, you just have to understand that while you're out there on your dog walk or in the car listening to the podcast, we're recording this at night time and I'm bloody tired, and unfortunately my mind doesn't work as just as well as it does during the day, okay?
And on that note,
right, I'm going to thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers, folks.